Welcome back to Not a Strong Start, a movie podcast by filmmakers who talk movies, television, and get super, super duper duper somber right before it's supposed to get all perky. I am your host, Ignore the Sky, because it was stuck in the grave.
I am not your host. Good things in small packages.
And I'm don't moo me. Just don't.
All right,
But
don't
wait.
tell me what to do. Don't tell me what to do, okay?
Okay, well, let me
But
before we get into this, let me just
there
do a
goes the
quick little
second half of our episode.
shoot.
You didn't see the syllabus, Marie? It's in there.
I wanted to say I want to say a quick little thing. My
Yeah.
brother used to be very inventive when he would moon me. He'd come up with different types of moons. So there was a spinning moon kick was my number one favorite thing, and he would moon me and do a spin and like hit me with his butt and like my arm, and it was like, ugh, like it was so gross. So
That's
spinning moon kick.
multi-talented. Huh.
Yeah, it was. He got inventive. He's an evil genius. So yeah, yeah,
Only when it comes to cracks.
yeah. That's it. He's all but the crack.
Oh, that reminds me of Waiting, the movie Waiting, and
The
they had the
Batman?
names for
The
like the
Batman.
Batman, the
Oh,
fruit basket,
Yeah.
like all
That's
these
what I was
different ways,
thinking too. Yeah. Yeah.
but it's separate for mooning.
That'd be a little more, yeah, inappropriate for you guys to be playing that game, but yes. Anyways, all right. So in this week's episode, we are doing our short film review. This is our 3.0. This is our third episode doing this. So we have a selection of four short films. One of them's called Ignore It. One of them's called The Sky. One of them's called Moonstruck, and one of them Dig Your Own Grave. All right. So is there anything you want to preface, Jose, before we get into it?
Going to and be sure to visit our 1.0 and our 2.0 episode that comes for this. This was just an opportunity we wanted to take to kind of give a little exposure to some of those short films that are easily accessible for anyone. So if you ever want to see a certain type of movie, they've got horror, they've got sci-fi, they got comedy, they got drama. You ever want to see a movie, but you don't have a lot of time on your plate? Let's say you only have 30 minutes to go. You can pop in, knock one or two of these short stories in, and they're not all gems, but you get some really good ones out there. So definitely keep track of our episodes and go in on your own and start searching YouTube for some of these. It's free, and I'm sure you have some artists and some creators that will be happy to have their hard work exposed out there a little bit more.
Hmm.
So
Perfect.
with that being said, let's go into our first one. Let's get right
Boom.
into it. All right, let's not ignore it. So the first one is called Ignore It.
I see what you did there. Clever boy.
The first movie is called Ignore It. It's about 7 minutes. A short film. It is a horror. It's directed by Sam Evanson. Yeah, Sam Evanson. Basically, the concept of it is you have a family that struggles with a. I always have trouble with this word. Malevolent,
malevolent.
malevolent. There
Malevolent.
we go. Yeah, it's that Hispanic in me struggles with certain words. Uh, struggles with a malevolent spirit that becomes violent when their presence is acknowledged. That's the general concept of it. So
Mm.
with this, uh, Marie, let's start with you. What were your thoughts on this one?
Um, okay, so this one I thought was, fairly well acted. It actually creeped me out. I think I plugged my ears a couple times waiting for like a jump scare and stuff. I thought like what you saw of the creature spirit, like the hand and everything looked really cool. I right away when they first sat down at the dinner table, I was wondering if this whole movie like thing could be or is a metaphor for like abuse in the family. That's kind of like what my first thought was because of how um it has like a grip and a hold over you. And if you acknowledge it or whatever, it would probably just heighten everything like that. So if the father was like abusive or something like that, like that causes that tension when they're all sitting around the dinner table and like the mom's also very like kind of timid about it, but then she confronts it and it doesn't go well for her. So I was thinking that maybe it was some sort of metaphor for abuse and everything like that and how it like controls and the environment and has like a hold and a grip over the whole family the whole time. That's what it kind of seemed like to me. Maybe I think it's like far fetched, but if that's so, then I liked it more. But yeah. It was good little 7 minutes.
It's an interesting thought process. I didn't think of it that way, but there are context clues in there that can feed into that aspect.
Hmm.
What about you, Dan? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is one I loved it. I thought it was amazing. The pacing was great, the timing was right. I loved the lighting in it, what they kept kind of dark in the shadows, using the reflections to be able to see the creature behind you, the way that they were teasing it. That's something that's very, very important, doing practical stuff as much as possible when you're dealing with independent filmmaking. The budget's small, you're not working with a lot, so you don't want to overshow and you don't want to show. It's basically an opportunity to show people how artistic and how professional you can be. And if you don't have the budget, the professionalism is a part that oftentimes you struggle with. So you don't want to overshow or overexpose things that maybe are rough. So you try to limit as much as possible. I saw the same metaphor that you did when it came to abuse. That's what I saw with the way that the kid was shuddering. Even when the dad came in and talked to him, there seemed like there was an uncomfortableness between the father and the son. That's kind of how I was reading it as well. I loved this one. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a great premise. It's one of those ones that I know what we'll be asking as well, which I don't know if you're going to ask afterwards, is whether we think it could be expanded or not. So I'll hold off on that then. So yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I thought the kids were unbelievable, especially the boy. He
Mhm.
completely carried that movie. He showed an acting range that you don't often see in kids. So to see that being done on this short film was crazy. I think this kid's awesome. I think he definitely deserves to be in some feature films. I thought he was a great actor.
Hmm.
No, it's good. We have very similar notes when it comes to this. I think first of all, it did a good job of establishing the rules right off the bat.
Hmm.
It was exposition, but it seemed like natural expositions, the warning before it goes down. So right from the start, we know what the rules are of this world. So especially with a short film like this, if you can set up the rules as quickly as possible, then the rest of the time we can just kind of live in that world with those rules instead of trying to figure out the rules. So they knocked that off. So then the rest of it, it's like, okay, now let's see how this plays out. So they're good with that. I had a note here where it was a great job by the kid. Like it
Hmm.
was such like he naturally looked scared and confused all at the same time. And without even words, just on his face, you can see him wearing that fear. But then it was an inquisitive fear. Like there needed to be an understanding of why he's afraid of what he's afraid of and all that stuff. And he did it all in facial expressions. So the kid did an awesome job with that. Uh, it was a really good tension scene overall. And then, Dan alluded to this, but it did a great job of finding alternative ways of presenting the threat while still keeping it mysterious enough that it doesn't lose its creepiness. A lot of times in movies, they'll start and it's like, okay, that's kind of creepy, this mysterious, and then they show the creature, and if it's not designed the right way or if it's CGI'd in a way, the creepiness can go completely out the window
Yep.
at that point, and then all of a sudden it's not scary anymore. It can become more comical. So it did
Hmm.
a good job of that.
Hmm.
So me personally, I think this might not work if it's extended. I think the concept works in its small exposure there with the tension itself. Like, I feel if you try to extend it over, like, there's only so much you could do, especially with the ignoring aspect of it. You would have to add a lot more wrinkles to expand it. So I kind of like it in its condensed version. Marie, we'll go back to you. Do you feel this should be expanded or it's good the way it works? If it should be expanded, what's a good way that it can be?
I feel like if it could be expanded, I mean, I like things that are just like short and sweet and that I get to the point right away. But if it was expanded, I think they would, I think leaning into like the abusive environment idea would be a smart thing to do because you can like trick the audience for a long time thinking that it's just a haunting and these kids are seeing like the demon and stuff like that. Maybe it's just the kids seeing it. Maybe there'd be scenes in school and everything. The teacher's picking up on this. The kids are telling them about this like entity that follows them, and somehow the teacher has to like end up at the house and then sees that there is no entity. It's really like the dad who is abusing them or something like that. So I think if they really leaned into if it was a metaphor for abuse or not, if they leaned into that aspect, I think they can make it a longer like type of uh when there's like a surprise ending type thing,
Hmm. Twist,
type of
twist
movie.
ending.
Thank you. Twist, yeah, a twist ending. I'm like, what is this for?
Yeah.
I can say malevolent, but do I know the word
Yeah.
twist? No.
Nah.
Nah. So yeah, that's how I think they could do it if they wanted to. And I also really appreciated that they didn't really show the like woman creature thing close up, and they were really clever with it too. I love that too.
Ben, do you feel this should be expanded or better to stay how it is?
I love things that like I love when things are small and short, especially with short films and all this. But I felt like there was an angle on this one that you could expand. I love it as is. I wouldn't force it and think it needs to be bigger, but I think you can actually find an angle like that, like what you were talking about, Marie, where if you have like sort of like an It Follows, where it sort of gravitates and
Mhm.
attaches itself to people. Well, natural people aren't gonna be able to hold and withstand, be able to sustain their emotions. So there's a huge angle you could hit on that where it could be almost trailing you, tracking you. It latches on to certain people, or if you're emotionally hurt by anything, or you've had some big moments in your life that's making you emotionally imbalanced, the creature's almost drawn to that. There's an aspect to that that you can have, and you can show people who've been through trauma that are going through depressive states, and that's what the creature's latching onto because it makes you more vulnerable to be able to sustain your emotions, right? And trying to be cool and calm. So there's an aspect there that you can approach on this film. I mean, again, I still loved it as is, but I do see an angle going that way with it. The abuse part of it, I think that's what I saw here. If you had a whole movie about child abuse, at some point I would want to focus more on the abuse and it becomes less about the monster. It'd be kind of hard to balance that, in my opinion, for 90 minutes. But that could maybe be one of the storylines that's involved in the 90-minute feature or something like that. I think that would
Mm-hmm.
be great because then you would make the movie way more layered and deeper, like how the movie The Sixth Sense was, right? There's more deeper layers than just it's a ghost movie.
Right.
But like at first, I was like, okay, if they would go with this abuse storyline wise, they would have to change it a little bit because we see at the end, that dad himself kind of being a victim of this
Mm,
entity.
Hmm.
But I think if we do blend that idea with what you had, Dan, where it was like the entity is created and latches on when there is abuse in the household,
Hmm.
then it would make sense that even the dad, if he is the abuser, would be at risk, or the mom, if she is the
Correct.
abuser, would
Hmm.
be at risk. And maybe it's an attachment to the kid, because that
Hmm.
the kid was the only one it didn't have physical interaction with throughout the whole thing. It
Exactly.
mm-hmm.
touched the sister. We know the mom, and we saw the dad. So I
Hmm.
thinking of that way, I'm kind of changing my mind. I think it could play off well that way and still
Hmm.
keep it a creature aspect. All right, next one, switching genre a little bit. This one's called The Sky. This is an 11-minute, or give or take, short film. This is a sci-fi. This is directed by Matt Sears. And the general concept of this one is, as the world is ending due to what appears to be a natural phenomenon, a young woman tries to figure out who her final moments should be spent with. Arrow.
Hmm.
So on this one, let's start with you on this one, Dan. What were your thoughts on this one?
So this one had a lot more of a very independent, small budget feel, right? Outside of the VFX that they used. And it makes me wonder the people that were behind it, was the VFX artists attached to the actual production? Because if they did, then they did this for really cheap. In terms of budgetary costs. That doesn't at all mean that it devalues the product in any way. I've seen some phenomenal projects that had the VFX artist that was directly directing it, and it still came out great. Now, having said that, they set up the rules of this. I like the fact that we don't know about the sky and why and all that stuff. I love it the fact that they didn't do that. But you had the character. I guess I had more questions about the main character, the girl, because they set up trauma that she had with her mom and being thrown out, but yet all of a sudden she was fully dedicated to her at the end. So I kind of saw some contradictory elements about the main character that there just wasn't enough time to really explore. Now you had the friend that seemed to be the feeling that I got from that. It felt like the friend's been working with her on her mental and getting her to a better place and getting her maybe dealing with the mom's abuse, whether verbal, physical, we don't know. it kind of seems something like that. Like the friend was working with her on that, and the fact that she just cut off her friend really quick and ran to her mom. There was just something about that it felt too rushed to me, and it felt like I missed a big chunk of the storyline. This is where I felt like the length of the short film hurt it more, and because there was layers there, and I liked the idea that there was layers, I just didn't really. It just felt like we jump skipped, and it felt like I missed a big chunk of the middle. That's how I felt. So I had some issues with it, to be honest with you. I felt like I needed to see a lot more. I didn't really get enough.
All right.
First of all, that wasn't enough mushrooms to get you high. You don't just take one little chunk and that's it. All right. That's not how it works. All right. You need at least half
Yeah.
that bag to yourself. All right. You're not going to trip from that. And also, it's like not mushrooms. You're going to have a bad trip. Like, smoke some weed, maybe. At least you'll be like, whoa, let's be one with the earth, the sky. But yeah, you don't do mushrooms for that. Come on, people. But anyway, I loved how the sky looked. I loved that everything was being raised into the sky, like the sky was absorbing the earth. I also love that they didn't explain why it was happening. It's just everyone knew that it was the end of times. I thought that it was a good choice for it to be like this beautiful and peaceful end of times, not like scary and destructive and everything that we're used to. And also like when the mom kind of explodes slash implodes, I don't know, it kind of looked like a galaxy or like a supernova or something. So I don't know if everything's like becoming space. I don't know, but I like the idea behind it a lot. And just how it was executed, the thought of like the world's ending, and just I've never seen it done in that way where it was like a serene, beautiful way, like it's like something needs to be reborn or something. I don't know. Um, I know, yeah, I know what Daniel's saying where like it felt rushed with the characters, especially how quick she just cut off her friend who was just I guess trying to protect her, but I guess like you're not thinking it's the end of days and you want to rekindle with your mom, so I understand like being that quick to switch to be like, oh my god, I should go see my mom because I'm never going to get to see her again, and like she called to make amends, so I understand that quick snap of it, but her leaving her friend there, which is really sad because now her friend's going to be unalived all alone, and yeah, that was sad, but yeah, I wanted a little more backstory, but I think what the idea behind it was really cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one. So, first of all, my first my first thought on this is like, uh, why do you care if people are seeing you do drugs? The world is definitely ending. So, like at first, her reaction, like, and she's looking around, like people still see you, and I'm like, the world's ending. I don't think anyone cares. So I just had to throw that out there. That was my first. It's like I was like, okay, maybe that line should have been written a little bit differently.
And it's
Mm,
just mushrooms. It's not even like they're doing hard drugs. You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah.
like,
Uh, so I like that I like that the world is ending, but that isn't the problem that we have. It isn't the conflict. They've accepted that the world is ending. It's an emotional conflict amongst an apocalypse. Usually, you have an apocalypse happening. That's what people are dealing with, trying to find a way around it, find to survive. Here, we're beyond that point. They've accepted it's over. So the conflict had to come for something else. So it was internal emotion, was the conflict here. Do you go with the mother whose family but has mistreated you, or the friend that's been there for you but lied to you so they can spend the last bit of their life with you, but that lie preventing you from seeing your mom as the last person. That creates that emotional conflict between. And I get what you're saying, and where it was like a quick switch. But then, and this is where more context will matter. But there's, you know, a lot of times with abusers, there's a lot of gravitating right back. I mean, abusees. There's a lot of
hmm
gravitating back to their
hmm
abusers. There's a sense of loyalty, whether it's a family, whether it's a spouse, or significant other. There's always that thing of going back. It might be the same thing again, but there's that I love them. There's that loyalty, and now this is a mother in there. So someone, who gave birth to her. So I can see the conflict. And if she's not close to accepting that part of her life is never going to change, you can see why they might be, because there's no time to think about it. The world is ending
mhm.
in there. I think that even though it probably should have been a little bit more amount, like Marie said, I think the adding of the shrooms adds a layer because you still in the back of your mind kind of have to question how much of this is real. Did she
Hmm.
Yeah.
really see her mom at the end? Was that really happening?
Hmm.
Uh,
Mhm.
we know the world is ending, but is it ending the way we're seeing it end, or is that just out there visualizing it? So
Hmm.
I think it adds an element of mystery when it comes to it.
Hmm.
Now, moving on to the next question of expansion here. I feel there's room to expand here, but if you're going to expand, you're going to have to provide more information on what is actually happening. It doesn't mean it has to take up the whole movie in it, but at least at the beginning, an explanation of, what is occurring, why it's occurring, and then kind of move on from that. I believe we did that. I can't remember the movie with a Steve Carell movie where
With
they
Keira
explain at the
Knightley.
beginning, yeah,
Keira
why the
Knightley.
world is ending, and then that's it. It's over about that. Now it's about like getting to where you want to be at the end of things. So they'll have to do that, and then they will have to dive deeper into the relationship with her and her friend, relationship with her and her mother, to bring out the stakes and make those decisions way heavier in the long term when it comes to the movie. So, Dan, what do you think about expansion or no?
Yeah, and then even when you were talking about, I thought of that Steve Carell one as well with Keira Knightley, and then there's even another one called Risk Cutters, a love story with Shannon Sossaman. Where they're in the afterlife, and there are people that had committed suicide, and now they're in the afterlife, and it felt kind of like the same thing where they're kind of navigating in this afterlife story. So it kind of felt like that. To me, I feel kind of being hypocritical here when I say that I need a little more from the story, but at the same time, if it would have been expanded, we just named off two occurrences where it was actually more interesting on how they told their story. That I felt like if they expanded this particular one, I don't really see the most interesting thing about this one was what Marie was talking about with the gravitational pull, the sky was pulling it up. That to me is what makes the story more unique and interesting, but you can't have that happening in the movie earlier. So it'd be more about the character dynamics and all that. So in its current form, I don't really see how you're going to make this very unique in its current form by expanding it more. I don't know. So I'd probably say no.
Before we go to you, Marie, what if uh what if it's not a feature film expansion? What if it's making it a 30 minute?
Yeah, if they did that,
Mm.
then yes, then I think you can absolutely expand it, and I would almost prefer that because there was a lot of character deeper like layers of things that they just barely started teasing and then it ended. I would have loved to see more about that because then I think the ending could have been way more impactful because it's not so much that she flipped and went back to her mom. I can understand that. It's more of just completely abandoning her friend. Like that's the part where I'm like, man, you just completely abandoned her and didn't give a damn about where again, if you're focused on your mom, you wouldn't, but like that's also just like really messed up that you just left this poor girl by herself when her whole thing was to keep you around and be there with you and her with with each other. It just seemed kind of messed up and it made her character seem a little more selfish, I guess. But again, I'm sure there's other deeper layers like you talked about with the trauma and all that stuff that like I wish we would dug deeper. So in that regard, sure, I could have seen a little bit longer of a short film, but not a full length feature.
Marie, what are your thoughts on expansion or no?
Well, I thought if they expanded on it, just because I really, really liked how the world was ending. That was my favorite part about the whole thing. I honestly don't think even if they did expand on it, that they would have to explain why it was happening or even really voice like the world's, well, a little bit, but a backstory as into why, I don't even think I need, but I
Mm-mm.
would, if I saw something expanded on this, it'd be the girl's story is just one story in a bunch of stories that are simultaneously happening at the same time during this time period of the world ending. Like maybe a couple days leading up to it, and then like the final end of the world. And you could have varying stories, like some really painfully sad stories where there's people just all alone with no family, and you're focusing on them and like why they're all alone, or you can have an old married couple and they're ready to face death together. They had a like content life and everything, and you have like other people who are just like so stoked for like the world to end, like they're gonna become one with the universe. So you can have like all these different stories that are like coinciding at the same time, and then having like the big end of the world, knowing all the different people who are involved into it. Like every type of person could be represented in a sense. And I just think it'd be really touching, but also simultaneously heartbreaking at the same time and horrifying. It could be all those things. I like to see like a really long movie. I think I cry my eyes out about that.
Um, your description when you were talking about right now actually reminded me an
Is
Australian
that
movie, Final Hours.
That's what I'm saying. Like the stuff we're talking
oh,
about, I've
okay. It's
seen
already there.
versions of this movie already.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
See,
these fun
I haven't really, so that's why I'm like, I'd
Oh,
love to
got you.
see it. So
Okay.
give me a list
yeah
of these movies so I can watch it
This
already.
is three movies we just listed that are
yeah
similar to
I
what you just
haven't
described.
I haven't seen
yeah
any of
Yeah.
them, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 absolutely.
yeah these Final Hours Australian movie where the world's gonna end.
Is it? Okay.
Everyone and the movie is follows one guy, but it's you literally seeing all the different ways that everyone is handling it. Acceptance,
Yeah. Okay.
violence,
But no.
party, like everything, and and that whole movie is seeing all those different ways. So I
Okay.
recommend definitely checking that one out, and you'll get a little bit of that. But it reminded me of that. Doesn't mean it wouldn't work for this. You know, they can have it with a different touch. You know, on that aspect. But no, that's good. All right, going on to the next one, the third one. We have Moonstruck. This is it's about a 13-minute short film. It's categorized like a sci-fi horror on this one, and it's directed by Alan C. Wright. The concept of this is basically a mother tries to protect her daughter after the moon drives her husband crazy. In there. So, Marie, we'll start with you on this one. What were your thoughts on this project?
Um, okay. I was just like, this is kind of like bird boxy, like also kind of seeing this sort of in a way. I was very involved in it, and I really loved everything that was happening in it. Especially what you're hearing on TV and everything in the background. Like I was really getting like freaked out, like, oh God, what's happening? Is it like aliens? I was like, what's going on? And I love the way everything was lit. But once those eyes came, I was pretty much like, this is too comedic. I kind of lost the fear, and yeah. So I felt like kind of like, oh, I really loved where it was going. Even when you heard the husband talk, I was like, okay, this is so creepy. But then once you get the reveal on what it's doing to people, I was like, oh, it wasn't for me. I know it's like low budge and short and everything is a good kind of concept, but I just that kind of killed it for me a little bit.
What were your thoughts?
Yeah, normally I agree with you on that kind of stuff, Marie, but the fact that it's so independent and short budget, I can overlook things because I'm looking more like on the idea and stuff that they have, right? I mean, obviously execution's a big deal with that, but the eyes reminded me a lot of At World's End, the Edgar Wright joint, right? So like it felt very much like that. It reminded me of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Hmm.
Um, so the little world that they set up, I felt like it was complete. Like I saw what happened. I see the thing. We see what happens to the main characters. I felt like in that regard, it was a complete story that we saw. I really like. There was something about it that I really liked that it was involved with the moon. That was pretty unique, and I really like that idea that when they're
The
looking up at
Night
the
Moon.
moon, yeah, yeah, exactly. Like there was something interesting about that, and I really like that because there's always been a fascination with like the moon and the polar effect and like all the stuff it has on our Earth. That's an interesting turn that I don't see being done a huge amount of time, or a lot of the time, I should say. So that this one was a little more interesting in that regard. Having said that, the premise is something we've seen a bunch of times already, so there's not really anything super unique about it. The eyes didn't bother me as much. I know it had more like a comedic feel, like you said, to it. But again, it's an independent short film, so I mean, I can kind of look past that stuff. But um, yeah, it was good.
So, first of all, it gave me Dawn of the Dead opening scene like vibes. You know,
Hmm.
of waking
Hmm.
up,
Yeah, alarm clock.
things already started to go hell. You know,
Hmm.
the trying to escape an attack. So in that aspect, it kind of gave me that that feeling itself. Uh, First of all, a character that right off the bat follows instructions. That was like good. You know,
Hmm.
usually it was like, wait, you can't do this, and it's like the first thing characters do. You know, right away she was like, okay, I can't look at the moon, which was perfect. I do like that they were using the TV for context. I feel like
Hmm.
that was a good touch. You don't take away from the tension that the scene is trying to create by having exposition and
Mm,
conversation between people to explain what is happening. You let the TV in the background do that. I like when movies do that, and then they count on our observation skills to be able to like catch things, give us a little credit as a viewer without bogging down a scene. So I felt that was a plus. Um, Overall, I liked the concept, but it felt incomplete, and there was no real conclusion at the end. Like
Mm.
the other two that we read, we kind of got a conclusion to what was happening. This it felt like it was part of a scene, and I was like, "Where's the rest of the scene?" In there, and then that kind of killed the vibes like for me. When it comes to possible like expansion for this, I can see this being expanded and kind of have a invasion of the body snatchers type story. Like I feel they'll have to keep it more grounded. I wouldn't want to go global with the issue.
Mm.
Kind of keep it where it's in that town and it's this woman and her daughter, maybe a couple other survivors, just trying to make it out and trying to survive until daylight as like the town is slowly being taken over with. That's the way I can see it. And of course, do have to upgrade the VFX when it comes to the eyes because it did look a little silly. Uh, and I think part of it made it silly because you could still see the pupil, but it's still like glowing. It just made it look weird.
Hmm.
But it made it look like stickers, like there was just bright stickers on their face. So you have to
Yeah.
fix that. That's the way I can see it expanding. So going back to you, Marie, can you see
Mm.
this being expanded? You think it should stay the way in the format that it was at? What are your thoughts?
Well, like what Daniel said, it's like we've seen so many things that are just similar to this movie, even though the moon aspect is interesting and like having to stay um alive, I guess, until dawn, and then like, well, what happens when the moon comes back, and like what? Yeah, but if they did, or if it was to be expanded on, I think everything you just said would. Yes, I agree with you. Yes.
Dan?
I would just be like repeating you if I said anything.
yeah, I would rather not see it expanded because we've seen it done so many times and it's been done so many times very, very well. But like, I don't
Mhm.
really see how they can make super unique about it. If the only way you could kind of try to spin is like what you said, if you keep it kind of more local based. But those even that movie was it? Don't Let Them Hear You Scream. Is that what it's called? Right, the one with the girl that's stuck in the cabin by herself and with the aliens and stuff.
Oh,
What was that one
Oh,
called?
no one
no.
can save you, or
Yeah,
no one will save
yeah,
you.
Yeah,
yeah,
no
that
one save
one.
you.
I loved that movie. I thought that one was great. If you go more local, but then again, I've seen movies that are like this again. So I'm gonna keep comparing it to other ones because the premise just didn't have anything unique about it outside of just the moon aspect. So you would really have to do something different.
What if we add in this wrinkle
Okay.
where even those that are controlled, once sun rises and the moon is gone, they're out of the control, so they're back to themselves. But now you're adding a timer to it
Okay,
because once
that's
that moon comes back
interesting.
out,
Yeah.
they're kind of going back. So you're
Yeah,
having to work with these people during the day, try to find some solution or at least some safety measures. Because if you've already
just
looked
to
at the
ride.
moon,
Yeah.
as soon as the moon comes back, it automatically has control of you again.
Yeah, I
Oh.
love that. And if you place in a city where like what is it, like Alaska or something like that or Antarctica, isn't it?
Hmm.
Where there's like 30 days of like night. Like you'd have to do something like that
Yeah.
was like a ticking time bomb because it's gonna go full night for like a week or something.
Yeah.
Then I can kind of see how you do it. There's some kind of eclipse or something that somehow ties into it. Then that's more interesting. Now you gave me a premise of something that I haven't seen yet. Now you have my interest.
Hmm.
So
I
yeah.
have your attention.
Smart.
Now I
Now you
have
have
your
my attention.
curiosity.
There you go,
Hmm.
man. There you go.
All right, for our final one we have here. Actually, I didn't put the time how long for this one, but it's not that long. I think it was under 10 minutes.
13.
13.
13. Okay.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
next one. So we have Dig Your Own Grave, which is about 13 minutes long. This is like a dark comedy. It's directed by Kirk Larson. The premise of this is you have an enforcer who brings his victim. He's an enforcer slash like hitman, seniors for like the mob, brings his victim into the desert to dig his own grave, because he's going to take him out due to his debts. But he runs into a little bit of an obstacle. That's the premise of this. Dan, we'll start with you on this one. What were your thoughts on this one?
This one was so different than the others that the genre threw me out for a second. I had to make sure that this was the right short film you share because I'm like, this is very different because the other ones had all like some
You know,
kind of
I always
sci-fi
mix in a
horror element.
comedy. Always mix in a
Exactly, yeah.
comedy.
Having said that, this one was a very pleasant surprise and I really enjoyed it. I thought this one was really funny. I thought the acting was pretty good in this. Um, the shout out that I really give for this one too is because it sounds like at first it sounds like a sketch comedy, like something you could do in like a minute and a half, right? Because it was very simple, very basic. Something that I'll give a shout out to the director on was that he kept changing tones. At first, it was like more
Mhm.
darker, and then it would go into the more kind of funny drama, and then it would switch tones again. So that's where the length kind of helped a little bit because he kept changing tones. And if I'm watching this as a producer and I'm watching this, I would think, hey, this filmmaker actually has something here because he understands tones. He understands timing with the editing and the way that they film this, which is pretty impressive for being somebody that's amateurish doing a short film. You know, you look for certain skills and talents and stuff to see if they have a bigger understanding of production and film, and especially the genre that they're working on. So I thought he did a really good job there. Having said that, I felt like it was a little too long, like 13 minutes, a little too long. They could have cut it down and make it feel more like oh man, I wish I got more. Like I wish I got more out of this. I felt like at this point it was like a little too much, and I wish they dialed it back a little bit. But I liked it. It was funny.
Marie?
Um, this movie had me at the title card. The title card popped up, and I'm like, I love it. I love it already. I love that aesthetic. I was genuinely laughing the whole time. I thought the actors were both awesome. I thought that long P joke was hilarious. The dialogue was hilarious. I actually loved everything about it, and for me, it affected me differently than it did Daniel because when it was over, I wanted more of it. I could have watched them for like an hour for sure. I could have watched their back and forth for a long time. I was like, oh, no, that's over. I want those guys back. I wanted like I was really sucked into it, and I loved just the back and forth and like then some emotions, but then they just switch back to being like enemies, and then it's funny again, and like he said, the tone changes. This one had the least amount of views on YouTube, and I think it deserved the most because I just absolutely I loved this one so much. Like it was so good. I really could have watched it for like I don't know, at least 45 minutes. I probably could.
Oh, wow. Jeez.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Okay.
could have. I
Yeah.
wanted more. They
Okay.
had me hooked. I was so involved with them.
Yeah, this one, like at first it started and it just seems like your typical, mob like thriller action movie type stuff. And even like with the music, the pacing of the scene when they get out of the car
Yeah.
and everything, it really was like that. And kind of like Dan was talking about the tonal changes. So that
Mm.
first tone is nothing like what the rest of the scene was going to be, which kind of threw me off first. I'm like, wait, I thought this was supposed to be a comedy. This is not seeming like a comedy at all. And then I just burst out laughing when he first hit the dirt with the shovel. And
Yeah,
then
me
the
too.
laughs just continued from there throughout it. This had me laughing throughout it. I really enjoyed it. It was just such a simple yet funny concept. And for anyone that's watched any type of mob related movie, gang related movie, and things like that, the scene feels very familiar when you start, but then it hit little elements that you don't really think about when it comes to these scenes, and they touched on that a little bit because these scenes tend to go so smoothly in other movies, so that they added that comedic element of touching on some of those things. There was really good chemistry between the two actors and funny natural dialogue. I never felt like they were reciting lines. It felt like a natural conversation throughout it. And I feel that's a big ups to not only the actors who delivered it, but also the writers who wrote these lines. So it was really strong. When it comes to that, I enjoyed every aspect. I enjoyed both characters. Uh, when it comes to expansion, I feel like this was perfect in its current form. In there, like we got background context on the characters. We talked about like with the sky, we needed more background context with it. This we got the background context, so we knew what these characters were coming from. We got clear picture of that scenario. We got clear picture of the stakes, and there was laughs in there. So I feel like they nailed everything within their time frame. And I feel if you do expand it more, you run the risk of possibly creating cracks by overstretching. So I felt I needed no less and I needed no more. It was like ideal by the end of it. Um, Dan, what were your thoughts when it comes to expansion? I
Uh,
know you already said
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
it's too
I
long.
agree with you. And even if I said cutting it down, it wouldn't even be dramatic. You know what I mean? Like I wouldn't, but the fact that he said he was like a guidance counselor, so him talking to the guy, you can already tell how his skills started coming up. So it seemed very believable that he was able to get the guy to open up. It was perfect as is. And it's like what you said. If we go too much with the banter, you're now losing the emotional appeal too much because then it'd be drawn out and separated too much. And now you're leaning too much in a one tone, where then when you try to bring out the other one, now it feels like a misguided sort of with the tonal changes sometimes, which then it starts becoming an issue. And I just don't think there was enough material for them to hit too much on the emotional part because we saw enough of it. So I agree with you. I thought it was perfect in its current form. Don't touch it. It should be leaving you wanting more. And that's what it did.
Marie?
I mean, I wanted more, so I mean, I'll take it or leave it. I'll take it the way it is because yeah, it's good. But if they gave me more, I would have kept watching. Like if it was longer, I would have kept watching it, and I would have been like, this is good. I mean, I don't know, like all the problems could arise that you mentioned, but I mean, I was in it. I was in it.
If you would have expanded it, Marie, what are some possible routes to expand it while keeping it fresh?
I don't really know. It's just because I was so engrossed in their conversation and the back and forth emotions and the back and forth between like their switches with how they were treating each other. I guess that would get old. I mean, if someone did expand it, they could do like flashback backstory stuff, I guess. But then I don't think that's necessary.
What if, and again, I wanted to stay the same. I wouldn't expand it. But I think one way to keep the same tone and dark comedy aspect, and you could have expanded it, is what if he prematurely buried him? He actually wasn't dead
Yeah.
in there. And
Yeah.
we see him drive off and he kind of just like he passed out and he kind of just like wakes up, kind of like snaps out of it, and then we have a chance for another interaction with them. Where it goes from there, I don't know. I don't see feature film out of this,
hmm
but maybe you could have expanded it to maybe a 30-minute short or something like that, and have another interaction where he shows up at his house again, all covered in dirt, and now we got more back and forth.
I guess I just feel like I loved it so much that I want them to have more recognition for it. There's only 78K views, and I was like, no, like everyone watch this. They're so good. The directing's so good. Everything's so good. And I guess I'm like I want them to have a bigger, longer movie because I think that they deserve it. They deserve the recognition because it was that good.
All right.
That's
With
all.
that being said, like we do at the end of all these episodes, we have our personal rankings for these movies. So I'll start it off on this one. The order that I had it in is Dig Your Own Grave was at number one for me. The Sky was at number two for me. Ignore It was at number three. And then Moonstruck was at number four on this. Marie, moving on to you. How did you rank these personally?
The exact same. The
All right.
exact same. Yeah, exact same feelings.
Mine are
Dan?
different order. I had a different order. For one, I put ignore it because I really love the aspect of the abuse thing. I thought that was very interesting, and I thought there was deeper layers and meanings and stuff behind this. I thought everything that they did nailed it. So from a technical standpoint, they nailed it. Like everything was perfect about it in the way that it was done. It was a complete story. It was awesome. That one I could see how they can expand. That's why I went with ignore it once. Dig Your Own Grave was number two. Great, pretty really close up there. Like you can really argue whichever one's first or second. I just went with ignore it because I just love the idea of the layers of the abuse. Like I said, I just thought that was so much deeper. Third, I actually went Moonstruck. Um, just because I feel like that from a technical standpoint, they nailed it a little better than they did with the sky. The sky, I felt like there was just so too many things there that I was like, they didn't quite nail from a technical standpoint. And the thing with the short films, and especially when you do independent short films, only show what you can nail. Like that's the key to all of this. Don't show stuff you can't nail and can't execute properly. And I felt like the sky was a little too clunky at times. They didn't quite execute right. Even though Moonstruck I've seen a million other times, and the sky was a little more original to me, to be honest.
Like I said, I think the reason why I have Moonstruck at the bottom, and I kind of touched on it before, is it felt incomplete. Like I
Mm.
felt like I
To me,
didn't
they died
watch.
at the end. That's what I got. Like, hey, they died. The
Hmm.
husband got him. They
Yeah.
died. So to me, that was complete. We just didn't see them
Yeah,
die.
for me, it felt like incomplete. Like, okay, what happened? Did he get in? Did she try to escape? Like, what?
No, I think
That
she
that
died.
that that's what. Well, I'm saying that's what
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
think.
Got it.
I
Yeah.
didn't think that. You know, for the type of movie, there's always that chance of
Hmm.
escape. Who knows what could happen? It showed that he wasn't invulnerable. She was able to, you know, capacitate him for a little bit
Hmm.
at least. So there's a
Hmm.
fighting
Mm.
chance there that just because he makes it in doesn't mean that it's going to take it out. So it felt the most incomplete out of all of them. It's the only one that I was watching and I was like, wait, where's the rest of it? And that's why I had to put it
Mm.
like at the bottom. But I agree with you on the technical aspect. It was stronger than like the
Hmm.
sky.
That's fine.
Hmm.
And usually when I'm, well, we all rate these differently, obviously, but for me, when it comes to independent, especially when it comes to short film, I more inflate and really look at the technical skill set level because that's what you're trying to display. It's like something to have on your resume, like a business card of, look, you can trust me with your money to make a feature film or like a series of some sort. That's sort of what the calling card is. And that's why for me, Moonstruck, I feel like the guy technically crafted a better technical movie, I guess. But
And
again, it's all
that's a
preference.
good
All
thing with all of
preference.
these
Mhm.
shorts. Like as I mentioned, there's so much genre variety, there's so much concept varieties. It gives opportunities. We might get stuff like Moonstruck, which might feel familiar, but then you get other stuff like The Sky or Ignore It, which feels a little bit more original. So
Mhm.
you get a lot of that. So definitely we recommend that you give these a try, give others a try. If there's any shorts that you've watched that you really enjoy and recommend, send it our way. Put it down in the comments. Maybe we can include it in one of our future short film episodes.
Mhm.
As you saw with our final rankings and our other episodes, um, some of these can be very subjective, and it
Mhm.
can be enjoyable to different people depending on their taste. So it's like a buffet. It's a little bit for everyone.
Mhm. Absolutely. And bravo and cheers to the filmmakers that made all these because it's extremely difficult to make a short film. So just completing it, massive. So like congratulations to the filmmakers.
I didn't think any of them were bad in
Not at
any
all.
sense. That they were
Mm-mm.
all good. They were all really,
Hmm.
really well done and good movies. So yeah.
Hmm.
Definitely.
So thank you for watching another episode of Not a Strong Start. Please like, subscribe, comment, share on YouTube channel Not a Strong Start. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to your podcast. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter, Not a Strong Start. I'm your host. Ignore the sky because it was stuck in the grave. You can follow me at King_Sangre.
I am not your host. Good things in small packages. And you can find me at This Is Me Nombre on Instagram.
So many jokes running through my head, but I won't.
That was his purpose. That was and
Made me
I'm
wanting more.
don't yeah, don't moon me, okay? Don't moon me. And you can find me at Marie Plays It All. I don't want my eyes to be bright and
Pupils with stickers around them.
when the moon
Look at the
hits your
moon.
eyes.
You'll feel so much better. Look at the
Yes.
moon.